I'll start by, since Andy was released from prison not too long ago, he took the film vocational class there and has somehow honed his skills, and that was 6 months ago. We're very proud of his sobriety and that he hasn't violated parole.
And John, yeah, started out as a cartoon character trying to take over the world and has transitioned as a filmmaker.
Yeah. And Kevin is a manager of the chaos that we create.
I'm Andy Irwin, my brother John, we're filmmakers, the Irwin Brothers, and Kevin Downs is our producer. We cause problems, Kevin fixes it. John and I started out with this desire to be filmmakers as kids. I was 15 and he was 12, and my dad was in journalism, and so we always started out behind the scenes. And my dad would always communicate the idea of dream the impossible. Dream bold, dream big, dream the impossible, and because life is a great adventure. And so we always would have a lot of fun on these adventures as kids. But when I went off to college, there was a missions conference, and the missions conference they had people come forward and decide if you're going to be missionaries. And so I went forward because I felt like I needed to, and I called my father and I said, Dad, I think that I'm going to translate Bibles. And my dad, knowing that his son's educational skill set, kind of chuckled to himself a little bit. And he said, Andy, is this really what you want to do? And I said, well, no, I just feel like I have to be a committed Christian. And he said, Andy, what has God given you? And I said, well, he's given me a video camera, but I don't know how God could ever use that. And he said, Andy, give God what's in your hand. Let him figure out how to use it. And so at that point, we just stepped in and said, okay, we have this crazy dream and idea. At that point, being kids from Alabama, there was no opportunity to become filmmakers. But each step of the way, the Lord just has opened up doors for us to do what we love and tell stories. So with my kids now, I think I appreciate the heart that I see in my father, because now seeing my son and two daughters, you know, wanting to have those moments where they find their voice, and it's what do you love to do? And to see them kind of in that stage as they're 10 and under, begin to find their voice and find their purpose and what they like. And celebrate that. It's really encouraging that it's not having to fit into a box. It's finding what is it that you love, and figure out how you can make a living at that, and figure out how you can tell your story of the gospel through that. And so that's what I appreciate about my upbringing.
I think one of the amazing stories of my dad, I remember I was probably 6 years old, and we went to a water park called Whitewater in Atlanta, Georgia. There was a water slide there called the Dragon's Tail that to 6-year-old eyes was 10,000 feet tall, and we went all the way up to the top of it, and it's almost like I could see the earth bending, you know, in the substratosphere. I was in outer space, terrified of going down this slide. My dad said he didn't shame me, like, go be a man, or he didn't, you know, baby me of like, okay, just take the walk of shame down the stairs. He basically said, John, if you go down, I'll buy you Dusty, and that was a G.I. Joe that I had wanted for a very long time. We didn't have a lot of money at the time. And so I stared down the barrel of it and said, I'm probably gonna die, but I really want that G.I. Joe. So I pushed off and had the time of my life, did it 12 more times that day. And I think the lesson there was to just let your passion outweigh your fear, you know, and that's how you can move forward, that in life, things are gonna be scary. There's a reason that it says don't be afraid so many times in the Bible. And the reason is God calls you to scary things. And God's will be so far outside your comfort zone that it will be truly terrifying. But that's where God is. You know, he's out on the edge, he's out on the limb. So that really stuck with me, and my dad reinforced it when he bought us our first camera. I was 16 years old. I never thought I would pray for anything else because I had wanted this camera for so long. It was what was called a prosumer camera, which was a new thing. He said, literally, we unboxed it, and he said, dream bold, dream big, dream the impossible. We've been trying to live up to that ever since, and trying to instill the same thing in my kids, that life is too short to have small goals, you know? Dream bold, dream big. Failure's okay, you know, as long as you get back up and keep going. Better to fail audaciously than not try at all. I think that comes from my dad, and it stays with me.
The biggest thing from my upbringing that my dad instilled in me was, if you want to succeed, you've got to fail first, and you've got to get up and try again. As a kid, I would look for ways to kind of get out of, we grew up on a farm kind of out in the country, and my brother was like always working and doing gardening and stuff I hated, and I would sure figure out ways to not have to do it. And but the amazing thing is my dad would never give up on me, and he looked for the strengths that were in me to try and nurture those. Somebody asked me last night at the dinner, like, how in the world did you have the sort of self-awareness to try and listen to exactly what God wanted you to do at 23 years old? I said, that's my parents. Like, that had nothing to do with me. And that's because it's like I expected kind of when I reached 18 that nothing was going to be handed to me, that I needed to figure out how to fail first before I would actually succeed. And on top of that, I have a water park story as well, except
No
mine's
way.
not as dramatic as
Did you
his.
get a G.I. Joe too?
No,
Okay.
no, it wasn't as dramatic as his, but it was actually just really cool because there was one water slide within like 50 square miles of our house, and we went sometimes, but I longed to have a one-on-one time with my dad, and which is really selfish, it sounds like. And I can literally remember the day because the water slides were the coolest thing ever. And one day, whatever I did to get it, I got it. But it was the fact that he would take the time with me from whatever his schedule was and actually do something that meant so much to me, even if it was just water slides. And we went and we had the time of our life. And I wanted him, I didn't necessarily want to go down by myself, even though I did. I wasn't scared. I wanted to have the bonding moment where my dad and I were on the same mat. And that meant so much to me. And so I say that because now I search for times to be able to do special experiences with my three sons individually that I know will mean something important to them. And so that means the world to me. I think we all experience the effects of not only media, but also technology on the family today. And I mean, hey, I experience it in my family, my kids. They're fascinated with what I do, but not to the extent that they're so fascinated with their gadgets. I mean, we had sort of like an ancient dinosaur type of thing, but it wasn't necessarily the same thing as what they've got access to today. And so, you know, my wife homeschools our three boys, and so, you know, we use some of that for their schooling, but then it's also, you know, there's games on it and stuff, and you've got to really be diligent as a parent and limit that time so that they don't lose connection with the family environment and that family unit, and that can be a challenge, I mean, to be honest. And so we're cognizant of that, but it's one of the reasons why I'm so excited about Apostles, which was one of the movies that we announced last night, because literally our goal and our passion is to make the Word of God, to make the Bible so not just relevant in the home, but to let there be a fire and a passion within the hearts of the next generation that they're saying, Mom and Dad, let's read the Bible again tonight because I want to see how this story goes. I want to see how this story ends. And so that's the passion behind what we're doing, but we're doing it in a way that we haven't seen done before, where you've got the support from a Hollywood studio with the proper budgets and the proper vision, the creative, the marketing, and all of that. And they're going to go out and spend millions of dollars to support this vision that we have, which is absolutely unprecedented. It's exciting.
One of the things that my parents, I think, probably forced me to do at the time was memorize a lot of scripture. The Bible is a book that's in 90% of U.S. households. 2/3 of people that own it believe it contains the meaning of life. The statistics say nobody picks it up and reads it. That's the great problem under the category of biblical illiteracy. My parents, strict as they were, you know, really drilled the Bible into us. As I got older, I began to see the value of that. And of anything my parents did, that has stuck with me the most. The Bible is alive. The Bible will change your life. The Bible will guide you in life's decisions if you take the time to learn it. So what do we do with a generation that doesn't read the Bible? Well, I would look to franchises like Harry Potter or The Lord of the Rings or The Hunger Games. I've heard it said, story is the language of our hearts, mass entertainment is the language of our time. If you can do something in their language, which is mass entertainment, it draws them back to the books. So if you look at how many Harry Potter books sold after the movies, it's staggering the way that they go together. In fact, The Rise of Witchcraft in America goes right with it. That's the power of our industry of mass entertainment. That's a tool we must wield. So to me, it was all about how do we give the Bible to this generation in an emotionally compelling way that is visceral and entertaining, and you can identify with the characters and yet accurate. to then make people say, I gotta read that book. Because that's what's worked for other franchises in Hollywood. Why can't it work for the best-selling book of all time? Because I know that if you take the time to pick it up, it'll change your life. We feel like the best way to get people to do that is to reinvigorate epic biblical movies. And we see it as a cinematic universe to be explored, like Marvel. And we feel like the way to start with that is this group of underdogs right after the death of Christ, empowered by his resurrection, filled with his spirit, that turned the world upside down in one generation. And that Band of Brothers story is very, it feels very, they say write what you know. And right now we feel like under-equipped, like how are we chosen for this job? God's made some sort of mistake for choosing us to do this. You know, we feel those things, that God is using us for his purposes in a way that is kind of blowing our minds. And so I resonate with those themes of these guys that we're not ready to lead, but we're chosen for something special. And I think that's the heart of Apostles. And it's an incredible story. And yet it's an incredible opportunity. And to me, I think it's the only way to get a generation to pick up the Bible again. And we've got to figure that out.
How entertainment really impacts the next generation, especially kids. It's huge. I think that filmmaking has become this generation's philosophers and education for our children. What they consume is what they feel like is reality and what is truth. And I think that's why there's so much subjective thought now, and people's opinions are really kind of all over the map. It's because I think it's a generation that's being trained what they believe through entertainment. And I think that as Christians, we can either rail against that, or we can get involved and fight for a generation. And say, we have something to say that's valuable, and it's valuable enough to us to work hard to entertain in order to capture a generation back. Entertainment is their language. To do that, you've got to make entertaining films. You've got to have, because the price of admission is the same for I Can Only Imagine as it was for the Avengers, and I love the Avengers, but you've got to fight for the same space. And so I think the quality has had to go up. And so Imagine afforded us a lot of opportunities to be able to compete at a higher level. Lionsgate really bought, our parent company really bought into the vision that we had, and they gave us resources that have never been given faith film up to this point. And so the baton has been passed to us for the time being, and we felt like rather than looking at ourselves, could we look back at what that next generation of filmmaker is and give them the opportunities that we didn't have to really amplify their voices, and in order for the quality to go up. And the stories that we got to announce last night are just the tip of the iceberg, but each of them are individually super exciting. They're very entertaining, very engaging. We wanted to plant our flag on the ground last night for our announcement event for Kingdom Studios to say, hey, we're here to fight for a generation, and we're here to compete in entertainment. And we're excited to see what happens.
This generation, they call them digital natives in that they've never known life without hyper-connected technology. And it's a double-edged sword because on the one hand, it has allowed us to conceive of accomplishing the Great Commission in our time. Like, we're the generation that could literally get the gospel to the entire world because there's more active mobile devices than people on the earth. On the other hand, it has inserted itself between the parent and child. So you used to control the influences on your children by where they went to school and where you live. Now, technology sits in between, typically, the parent and child. And it's very difficult. And in many ways, mass media is discipling our children. The average US household consumes 14 hours of aggregate content per day. It puts us in a dilemma that it's very difficult to control the influences that come into your home, especially in these platform service wars, because you buy subscriptions to entire platforms like Netflix, and it's very difficult to control. And it's difficult on the family, for sure. I would say as a content creator, I echo what Kevin and Andy has said. We have to play offense. The Bible says, on this rock I'll build my church, and the gates of hell will not prevail against it, okay? A gate is not something that someone will throw at you or attack you with. You have to storm gates, and we're meant to do that as Christians. So I think it's time that we invade the industry to take its microphones. And that's what we did with I Can Only Imagine and others. But there's never been more time, a better time, to enter the conversation with your kids, to know what they're watching, and to know why. And you know what's very interesting as well, especially for the parents of teenagers. Now, I'm not the parent of teenagers, so I guess I don't know what I'm talking about. But the data is very interesting in that they're the most connected generation of all time. But the number of people that you can count on in a life crisis has been declining since the 50s, and the space per person has tripled since the 1970s. If you add the fatherlessness epidemic on top of that, what you get is a hyper-connected generation that is desperately alone. That's why they're calling it the generation of loneliness, because of the social media is a facade, right? So I think that there's an incredible opportunity. I think a generation has never been lonelier, has never been in need of real connection and real relationships and people that they can really count on. This is an opportunity for Christianity, because that's what we do.
God is love, and love comes from God. In 1 John, the Bible tells us that God is not only all-loving, but that He actually is love itself. The heart of the Parent Compass television show is to bring the transforming love of God to families everywhere. In every Parent Compass episode, true stories reveal family struggles and how their lives were radically changed by the love of God. Parent Compass, an award-winning television series, is completely funded by people like you. If you have been touched by God and you want to share God's love to others, would you please pass it on? Jesus tells us to go into all the world and to tell about Him. With your donation, you allow us to take this television show into many different nations and in many different languages, free of charge. And a portion of your donation goes to Parent Compass Outreach to feed starving children. Your gift does so much. To make your tax-deductible gift, go to parentcompass.tv/donate. That's parentcompass.tv/donate. And thank you for sending love and hope around the world.